Welcome to the Terry Stanley channel. Today, I would like to introduce you to the story, Sun-Kissed. Author, for Savior. Read by, Terry Stanley. Chapter 1, A Day at the Beach. Annabeth. I can't believe I let Piper talk me into this. I knew it was a really bad idea when we made it to the beach. Pipes, don't you think the school will notice a quarter of the 9th grade isn't there? I asked as I looked around at all the people. You worry too much. It's not like we do this every day. Summer's so close, none of the teachers are doing anything anyways, she said to me. Frank and his girlfriend Hazel were there, Nico and Will had come, Luke and my other best friend Thalia had decided to skip too. Piper's boyfriend had been waiting for us at a table on the beach we were going to spend the day at, and he also looked worried. This is so many people, he said, looking up the hill at another bunch of people arriving. Calypso was laughing at something Leo had said, and Rachel was there unpacking a canvas and some paint supplies from their car, so she must have rode with them. I looked around for the one person who was missing. Percy had only been at school for a year, but he had quickly settled into our group. With his stupid jokes he made everyone laugh, and Piper said with his good looks he should get a girlfriend, but he didn't seem to want one. I agreed he could get one easily. He was funny and smart when he tried to be, stuck up for other people, and made friends quickly. Not that I noticed any of that, that's just what my friends told me. Percy. I walked down to the beach where everyone else does. I didn't really know who to talk to. They were all mostly people I was friends with, except Luke, but they also pretty much all had a girlfriend or boyfriend. Too bad Grover and Tyson couldn't be here, I thought, thinking about my best friends from my old school. I didn't have any friends like that here. The closest friends I had here would have to be Thalia, Frank, and Hazel, but they were all with the person they were dating, and I decided not to interrupt them. Instead I decided to go sit at the table. Piper and Jason were there, but Piper ignored me. She'd been mad at me since I told her to stop trying to hook me up with people. Jason shot me an apologetic look and ignored me too, because she had told him to ignore me until I got a girlfriend. I rolled my eyes and turned to talk to the other person at the table. Annabeth. She was the only one who didn't seem to like me very much. Or maybe she was just too busy being a perfect student to care either way about the sort of new kid. Hi, I said to her. She looked up at me. Hi. Where's your book? I asked. She always had a book with her. I had been planning on going to school today, so I left it in my locker, she said back. So what are you doing? I asked, trying to make some small talk till someone else who would talk to me arrived. She looked at me like I was stupid sitting here talking to an idiot. Piper looked up at Annabeth confused, and Annabeth stated at me as if dating me to respond. I was saved from having to say anything else by Rachel. I turned away from Annabeth's grey-eyed glare to look at Rachel as she slid onto the bench next to me. Rachel didn't hate me. So I was hoping she would be in one of her super chatty moods instead of her quiet one. So you guys enjoying the party? I hope I brought the right paint for the water. I'm really hoping to get to paint the sunset today, but I never end up doing it. Hey Percy, I heard you tried out for the summer swim team and did really well, so did you want to race? Did you make the team? You guys have any plans for the summer? Yep, she's in a talkative mood. I made the team and sure I'll race you, but don't be upset when you lose, I told her cockily. You mean if, Rachel said with a smile. No, I mean when. Don't worry Rachel, if you don't beat him I will, Annabeth chimed in. Hey guys. They're gonna race. Piper shouted, get 3 very pes attention. Everyone gathered around to watch as we hopped into the water and took off across the water. I noticed the gleam in the girls' eyes as we started, but ignored it. It wasn't even a real race at the beginning. I mean, they were so slow. Then when I was only seconds away from the beach, I heard someone shout Rachel's name. I turned around and saw why. She was drowning. She was still all the way back at the buoy that was our turnaround point. I watched incredulously as Annabeth swam right past her and kept going. I swam so fast I already had my arms around her before I knew what I was doing. I dragged her back to shore as fast as I could, which was way faster than I had been swimming, and made it to shore only a little bit behind her. I leaned over Rachel to see if she was breathing and she yelled, "You lose." Everyone started laughing. I was a little embarrassed but I laughed too. I'm just glad she hadn't waited till I tried doing mouth to mouth to let me know she'd been faking it. Well, I told myself I was. Chapter 2, Sunset. Annabeth. I looked over at him. He stood there watching Rachel paint. She had hoped after the race he might come over and congratulate her or something. Anything really. She just wanted him to talk to her. Maybe she thought maybe he's not talking to you because you're always making fun of him. She shook that thought away. He never seemed to mind, and although she made fun of him more often than the others, she made fun of everyone. There were plenty of things to pick on him for, and it distracted her from his eyes, and hair, and voice, and pretty much every other distracting thing about him. "You're staring again," Piper warned her with a smile. She felt her face getting a little hot and tried thinking about something else. Percy. After the race we had something to eat, then played volleyball and stuff. Then I looked over and saw Rachel painting and went over to watch. I saw she was painting the sun setting over the water. Parts of the water were as bright red as her hair. She turned to me. The setting sun lit her hair up like a brilliant flame, and he found himself looking right into her green eyes as she asked, "Isn't it beautiful?" "Yeah," he breathed so quietly she barely heard him. Unlike her, he definitely wasn't talking about the sunset. Or the painting. Then he took a step forward. "Percy. Get over here, we're gonna play Twister." Hazel shouted at him. "Seriously?" he asked. Hazel laughed. "Yeah, now come on. You to Rachel." She called back over her shoulder as she walked back to the group. When they got over there, he saw they had put a bunch of mats together. He was also relieved to see Luke had left. I don't know why, but there was something about Luke I don't like. I never told anyone about it though, because I didn't really know why I hated him. We were playing the game when I fell right onto Rachel. I didn't plan on doing it. It just happened. I blame it on the 1 or 2 drinks I may or may not have had that night, but I wasn't even slightly buzzed. I pulled away quickly. I have to go. I stammered before leaving quickly. No one else noticed thankfully, but I couldn't look back at her. I had kissed her. I knew she'd probably hate me now almost as much as Annabeth. I'd have to talk to her and convince her it was an accident. But I couldn't yet. Oh great. Chapter 3, Midnight. Percy. I left the party. If I stayed I'd have to talk to her face to face, and I didn't know if I could do that. I needed to talk to someone before talking to her. I called Grover as soon as I got into my room. I told him everything that happened at the party. "So you kissed her? Big deal. If she had cared she would have talked to you about it, or at least texted you," Grover said right as I got a text message from her. "She did. Just now," I told him. "So then go talk to her. Or text or whatever, just go. I've been telling you for years you should get a girlfriend." Alright, whatever. By I had expected talking to him would help me, but now I felt worse. I checked the text. Read, "Percy, where did you go?" Read, "Why did you leave?" Percy, "I went home. Sorry about you know." Read, "What are you sorry for?" Percy, "Twister." Read, "Oh that." Percy, "I was wondering if you could come over here to talk." Percy didn't really want to, but he agreed anyways, and she seems to him in a dress. It didn't take him too long to walk there, but it did take him a while to work up the courage to knock. She let him in and he blinked at the huge painting on the one wall. Dually it was 3 paintings, but they were all of the same thing. Him. The one was of him holding a sword in his hand with a defiant look in his eyes. The other one was of him too, but it was different. It had an expression painted on his face he would never wear. This painting was of him standing alone in the middle of a destroyed city. His clothes were shredded and he looked like he had been through Tartarus. There were tears on my face and looked like he was ready to give up. I quickly looked past that one because it bothered me for some reason. The last one was just a painting of me caught mid-laugh. I already knew she was a good painter, but these were the best work of hers I'd ever seen. I pointed to them. Her face grew to almost the same shade as her hair. I painted those one night when I couldn't sleep. Every painting on the walls are paintings I did when I couldn't sleep. I paint whatever it is that is keeping me from sleeping, she told me. So I keep you from sleeping? I asked her, and her cheeks grew even more red. What happened here? I asked, looking at the depressing one in the middle. I don't know, that's just how it came out, she told me. She was looking at the floor now. What about this one? I asked, looking at the one where I had a sword. I did that one after hearing your superhero story you had to do for Ella, because that's how I thought your hero would look like. The last one was actually the first one I painted, she continued on to the most normal looking one. I painted that one the day I first met you about a year ago. I walked around the room looking at the paintings of things that kept her up. There were paintings of monsters so real it looked like they would pop off the wall and eat you. There were several paintings of food which I laughed when I saw. Did you get hungry, cause normally that makes people eat not paint, I joked. Rachel looked at me, pinning me to the spot with her bright green eyes. She was staring at me and I really wanted to look away but I couldn't. She was still standing near the door of her room looking like she wanted to say something, or maybe she wanted me to say something. She bit her lip like she does when she's trying to decide something important and took a step forward. Rachel, I paused. I didn't know what to say. I couldn't joke about this. When I had got here the paintings had made me forget why I was here, but now I remembered. I wish I didn't, because now I'm really confused. She doesn't seem angry or even a little upset. I waited. If something was going to be said she would bring it up. She brought it up, but not like I thought she would. She took another step forward and kissed me. You don't know how long I've wanted to do that, she said quietly. Will you go out with me? She asked. I hesitated. Then I smiled at her. Yes, I just barely had time to say before a car door slammed. Her face immediately fell. My dad's home, she said. Go quickly, I don't want him to see you, she said through her teeth, pointing to her bay window. Just as I was stepping out onto the fire escape she called out to me, text me. I ran all the way home through the rain, totally forgetting that Mo was home and I was going to be in trouble for skipping school. How was school, Perseus? My mom asked. She rarely gets angry, but when she's angry she is scary. Oh no, I thought when she used my first name. She only called me Perseus instead of Percy when she's angry. Annabeth. Percy hadn't talked to me again at the party. He had watched Rachel and talked to other people, but he didn't even look at me. I wanted to try and text him, but I never have before and it would be really weird. So instead I texted Piper. Piper was the only person I told except Thalia. I didn't want everyone to know. I texted Piper and asked her if she knew why Percy had left the party so suddenly. She told me maybe I should go to his house and ask him about it myself. I thought about it, I really did. But then I'd have to talk to him to his face, and whenever I do that I end up insulting him. I didn't want to make him hate me, but he was infuriating with his dumb jokes and stupid grin. He was also absolutely oblivious. Almost everyone in school wanted to either date him or be him, but he didn't notice or didn't care. I had just made up my mind to take Piper's advice and go talk to him when she texted me. Pipes, he did it. Percy has a girlfriend. Wise girl, who? Pipes, Rachel. She just texted me to tell me. I didn't go ask him why he left. I didn't want to talk to him now. I knew Rachel liked him, but I didn't think Percy liked anyone. I was losing another boy to one of my friends when they didn't even know it. I remember when Thalia first told me she was dating Luke, I had felt horrible for weeks. By the time Thalia found out I liked Luke, I was already over him. After a while I got used to it. I hoped I would get over Percy faster than I got over Luke. But of course I didn't. I was still crying at midnight when my dad went to bed, and I didn't think I would be going to school tomorrow. Chapter 4, Back to School. Percy. I walked into school the next day. Rachel was waiting at my locker, but I had been expecting that. Why are you such a jerk? She asked. First you ignore my texts for hours, then you text to tell me to shut up. This was news to me. After showing up late to my house soaking wet and having skipped school, I had gotten into a little trouble. Just a little. Mom took my phone. For a month. And Paul had decided to text some of my friends. Annabeth didn't show up to school today, and since she already hates me, I really hope Paul didn't send her anything. I had to spend homeroom explaining my phone issue to a handful of my friends that had gotten messages. As soon as I got in the lunchroom, Piper raced up to me. A, you're an idiot. B, why didn't you tell me you liked somebody? She asked me. This was the first time she had had time to talk to me all day. Why am I an idiot? I asked, totally ignoring her question. Piper was always trying to set people up, and I didn't want her doing that, especially since the two people I liked were two of her best friends. Yeah, telling Piper would be a bad idea. Never mind why you're an idiot, it's none of your business. But why didn't you tell me before you decided to date Rachel? Piper sounded both hurt and accusatory. I wondered why. I mean, the hurt was probably meant as a joke, but I shrugged and sat down at my usual spot at the table. Our whole group squeezed around one large round table every day. I wondered again why Annabeth wasn't at school when I saw Luke sitting across from me instead of her. Next to me was Frank, and next to me on the right sat Rachel. Rachel looked up and smiled as I sat down, and everyone started peppering me with questions that I did my best to avoid. Then I noticed Thalia looking down on her phone and not paying attention to the conversation at all. She looked at Piper before telling me she was talking to Annabeth. Then she started gathering up her stuff and stood up. Where you going, dolls? Luke asked her. I'm going to go talk to Annabeth. She sounds upset, Thalia told him before quickly rushing off. Annabeth. I woke up around 11ish to find the house empty. Last night I had shut off my alarm. If Dad had been home, it wouldn't have made a difference, but he had been on vacation for a week and wouldn't be home until tomorrow. My stepmother could care less if I made it to school, so no one woke me up to make me go to school. I knew I'd regret it later, but I didn't want to see Percy and Rachel together. I took a shower and got dressed. Then I checked my phone for messages. I had two. From Percy. Good morning, gorgeous. It said. The next one asked me if I was free Saturday. I assumed he had simply texted the wrong person. I texted dolls. I told her about the messages he sent. I did this before realizing that unlike me, she was probably at school. Thankfully it was lunchtime. I was only half surprised when she showed up on my doorstep 20 minutes later. She explained what happened with Percy's phone. I was surprised when Percy showed up. He asked me about why I hadn't been in school, and I told him I was sick. He didn't seem to believe me, but he let it go. He wanted to know what his stepdad had sent me, so I showed him because it's not like it could hurt anything. As soon as he saw them, he turned red. Bright red. He took a step back, tripped over a cord, and landed flat on his face. It was funny, and I let out a little, looked up at me, staring right into my eyes. I felt a jolt of something. I turned away from him, and as I did, there was something I saw in his eyes. When I turned around, it was gone and had been replaced by his regular twinkle, as if he were debating whether he should cause some mischief or not. He was distracting me again. I was glad Piper wasn't here to tell me I was staring. Are you going to lay there all day, or do you plan on getting up sometime today? I asked harshly. His eyes flashed quickly with hurt, but Percy quickly shoved it down. I'll get up sometime today, he said slowly. Percy, Thalia said, shooting me an evil grin. Annabeth would prefer it if you stayed here all day. And all night. I felt my face growing red, but all Percy did was force his fake smile to grow wider. Then my phone rang. It was Percy. Well, I guess it was his stepdad. Hello, is this Percy's girlfriend Annabeth? A voice asked. Grover. Percy yelled from the carpet. I'll take that as a yes. His friend Grover said. I'm down here for a week, so you better have her meet me. Your first girlfriend, and I missed you asking her out. He continued. I was blushing, but I didn't think Percy noticed. He was too busy pulling the hood down on his sweater to hide his own face, which was so red he could blend in with a strawberry patch. All he would have to do is dye his hair green. Grover, he said in a strained voice, this isn't my girlfriend. Oh, so this must be the other one you like. Grover started to say, but Percy cut him off. Grover? How's Juniper? Percy asked with a smile. SHSHSHSHI is FFFF. Grover started slowly stuttering out a sentence. Percy ran out the door looking back with a sheepish grin, and at the rate Grover was talking Percy would be home before the sentence was done. For a second she smiled at the hilarious scene that just happened, but then she thought about it. If she was the other one Percy liked, then she was the mean one, because she was sure that's what he had been about to say. Sure, she was a little mean, but she didn't want to be described to strangers that way. But even that couldn't keep her upset. Percy liked her. She was ready for school tomorrow, even if it was going to be awkward. Chapter 5, Shots. Percy. I raced down the road and made a sharp turn into the building that MG apartment was. Then I ran right up the stairs, cause it would be faster than taking the elevator. I ran right through the door to my apartment without thinking about why it was open in the first place. Bam! Something hit me. Hard. I fell to the ground. I saw standing over me. He or she was wearing a mask, so I couldn't see their face buff. As soon as he or she turned around, I grabbed the bottom piece of a vase that was lying broken on the floor. The burglar spun around as I got up, but it was too late to stop me from slamming it into his head. It wasn't too late to squeeze the trigger again though. As I slumped to the floor next to whoever it was that had broken into my house, I had time for only one thought. I hope the others got out all right. Annabeth, 3 minutes earlier. Grover was still stuttering on about whoever Juniper was when I heard the sound of a slamming door over the phone. Then there was a bunch of banging and screaming. I heard the sound of running footsteps. Percy, stay wherever you are. Grover whispered urgently into the phone. Call the police, he said. I didn't want to hang up, so I had Thalia call the police. She was explaining to them what was going on when I heard another door slam over the phone and the sound of a gun going off. There was a thud and then the sound of shattering glass, followed by another bang. The sound of sirens was in the background already, but it was too late. For a few seconds all I could hear was the sound of slightly panicked breathing. Then I heard a scraping sound and the creak of a door slowly opening. Percy! Grover shouted. I hung up. I raced to Percy's house with Thalia right behind me, but they had already taken him to the hospital. We had to get a taxi to get to the hospital. It smelled horrible, but I was too busy worrying about Percy to care about the smell. The doctors wouldn't let us in right away, so Thalia called Rachel to tell her what happened. They let us in while Thalia was still on the phone. So we were the first people there. I walked in and saw Percy laying there with a blanket covering his lower half. The only thing covering his upper half was some gauze wrapped around what was obviously a wound because there was blood on it. As soon as Percy saw me, he grinned. "Ah, not again," he exclaimed. I gave him a questioning look. "The doctor told me my girlfriend was here to visit with my cousin," he said. Thalia smirked. She must have signed me in as his girlfriend on the sign-in sheet. I briefly wondered if they would keep Rachel out when she also signed in as his girlfriend, but I didn't care. Maybe it's fate. So many people assuming you two are dating, Thalia said. It was only 2 people. I yelled at the same time. He grinned and said, I wouldn't mind. Thalia grinned while me cheeks heated up again. Well, I would, I said, a little snappy sounding even to myself. Immediately his grin faded. Geez, I was just joking, he said, and then turned his head a little so he was looking at Thalia instead of me. Are my parents okay? And what about Grover? He asked worriedly. Thalia frowned at me before answering him. Grover's fine, but we didn't see your parents, she told him. Percy jumped out of bed. He said he was going to see his parents, and Thalia tried convincing him to sit back down, but he said he was fine. He definitely looks fine, I thought as he slipped on a shirt. Percy. I didn't think before I said the joke. Of course she'd be mad, I just started dating her friend and then I say that. I was joking though, so. No, I wasn't, I shook my head. Of course I had been joking. She walked with me to go see my parents in case I fell down, and I kept trying to convince her I wouldn't. There were several reasons I didn't want her coming with me. I didn't know how bad my parents were, and I didn't want anyone there in case I didn't want anyone there. Also, she was mean and smart and pretty and nice to everyone but me. Again, I shook the thoughts out of my head. Finally we arrived at their room, and the doctor told me they still couldn't have visitors. No one else had been shot, but they had. When hit by something, and they still hadn't woken up. I went to the bathroom and did something that in no way resembled crying. It was crying. Then I walked back to my room. Maybe Rachel would be there. She wasn't. Thalia said Rachel told her she couldn't come because her parents were arguing with her about something. Which meant until the doctors came in to make sure I was all right, all I had for company was my slightly crazy friend Thalia and the meanest girl I knew, because Grover's mum had made him come home. For some reason though, I found myself begging for them to stay. Unfortunately Thalia left. And even more unfortunately Annabeth stayed. For a while we didn't say anything. She just sat there in the chair staring at me. It was kind of creepy, but I wasn't going to say anything because I'm the one that convinced her to stay. Annabeth. It was his eyes, I decided, looking at them. I had been trying to decide what about him was the most distracting. Just as I decided this, Percy cleared his throat loudly. What? You're staring, Percy said. I had been staring at his eyes while I thought about them. And his hair when I thought about that. And, well, you get the point. No, I wasn't, I said. I hadn't thought he was noticing. He had seemed lost in his own thoughts, and I hadn't been staring that long. You were, he said, a small grin creeping on his face. And you have been for like 20 minutes. Thankfully I was saved from responding by the doctors coming in to do their last check on him. They took off the bandages and told him he could go. After putting on a t-shirt. They didn't want him wearing his other shirt because it wasn't sanitary to walk around in a shirt covered in dried blood. So we left the hospital with him wearing a slightly too small white t-shirt. I tried, and failed, not to stare again. Thankfully this time he didn't notice me. It's not my fault he kept stretching his arms as we walked. He turned to me about halfway to his house and stopped walking. Why do you hate me so much? What did I do to you? He asked. I don't hate you, I told him, a little surprised by both the question and the weird look on his face. He laughed, but it didn't sound like he was laughing because he was happy. I'm not stupid, I can tell you don't like me, even though that may come as a surprise to you. I flinched at the sarcasm in the last half of his sentence. I don't, I protested weakly. Percy snorted. Yeah, right. You don't hate me, we're best friends. All friends call each other names if every time they talk. And the fact that your smile drops every time I walk into the room has nothing to do with me, right? What about the fact that you'll listen to what everyone else says, but as soon as I start talking you're either rolling your eyes or talking to someone else? Percy shouted. What he said stung a little, even though it was all true. Except for the hating him part. But I couldn't help myself. I rolled my eyes. Maybe if we were friends he would have found that funny, but, thanks to me, we weren't. Percy's face went blank. It didn't make me feel better though. Every emotion dropped out of his face, even his eyes didn't show anything, and he turned around without a word and began walking in the opposite direction of his house. Where are you going? I screamed. I had to let him know that I didn't hate him. It's not really his fault. It's just easier to annoy him. Then I don't have to think about him. I'm going to Frank's, Percy said. And you're going home, he added as soon as I started following him. I ignored him. I ran up and spun him around by his shoulder to look at me. I'm sorry, Percy. I really don't hate you, I wasn't sure what to tell him. I wasn't going to tell him I did it because I got nervous around him. That would sound seriously lame. You just what? He prompted coldly, like he didn't care what my answer was, but his eyes told me something else. They were practically begging me to tell him, and with Percy his eyes rarely lie. I don't know, Looking into his eyes as they kept darkening and lightening was making me dizzy, although I'd probably still be dizzy even if they weren't changing. He was so close I could feel his breath. I could smell the scent of the sea that always seemed to follow Percy, and that wasn't helping my dizziness either. I'd never realized how tall he was before. I took a deep breath to calm myself and then let it out. Percy shivered for some reason. I took a small step forward. I couldn't help myself. When I did, Percy leaned forward slightly. He was so close. I thought he was going to. But no. His eyes widened and he pulled up sharply, taking a couple hasty steps back from me. It hurt. It did, but I didn't let it show. He turned around and ran off. He only looked back once. I was still standing there trying to figure out what had just happened. Chapter 6, Goodbye, Annabeth. Percy didn't talk to me for a week. Even after a week, the only time he talked to me was when he had to. I didn't know if he still thought I hated him or if he was just embarrassed that he may or may not have almost kissed me out there on the sidewalk even though he had a girlfriend. Since that day Rachel had been acting funny. I didn't think Percy had told her though, because her sour mood seemed to melt whenever she was around him. It was cute in the way couples are cute, but every time I saw it happen something broke a little more. I still couldn't help staring at him whenever I didn't see him looking at me, but he still caught me looking at him occasionally. Whenever he saw me he would have this look in his eyes that I just couldn't understand. I wanted to talk to him, but whenever I saw him outside of class he would find an excuse to get out of the room. He was avoiding me and it hurt me more than when he had pulled away. I tried telling myself to get over him, but I found myself unable to shut off what I was feeling. Usually it was so easy, but I wasn't able to whenever I was around him. Percy. It hurt. I didn't know if me ignoring her hurt her, but it definitely hurt me. A lot. But I couldn't keep seeing her. Maybe if I just wasn't around her these feelings would finally go away. I didn't know what I wanted. More like who I wanted. It wasn't fair that she hated me, but as soon as I got a girlfriend she liked me? What the H was that? I wasn't sure what to do about it, but I couldn't worry about it right now because I was taking Rachel on a date tonight. I pushed thoughts of blonde hair and stormy grey eyes. Right now I had to think about red hair and green eyes. Something was off the whole time though. I found out what it was when I dropped her off at her house and went to give her a kiss goodbye. She turned lightly and took a step back. Percy, I'm leaving tomorrow and I don't know when I'll be back. I was going to tell you before, but you were in the hospital when I found out and I just wanted to enjoy my last couple days here. I have to go to some stupid girls' school thing that my mom went to and I don't want to go, but I have to. Percy, I might not be coming back for years. I'll still text and stuff, but I don't think I can handle a long-distance relationship, she said in a rush. Are you breaking up with me? I asked. I was torn. I was upset because I didn't want to break up with her, and yet when my thoughts drifted back to stormy eyes I felt an odd sense of relief. I had no idea how to protest. But I wanted to. Plus once you get over me there is always that pretty blonde waiting for you, she said with a knowing smirk. I groaned in distress. This isn't about Annabeth, is it? I asked. Please don't say it is, I silently begged her. No, it's not, but I wouldn't be mad if you gave her a chance. I'm leaving tomorrow after school and I just wanted to warn you before the others. And Percy, she said, and I looked up. She was crying, and from the salty taste on my lips I knew I was too. I love you, she whispered, and my heart fell to the ground and shattered right there. I grabbed her arm before she could leave. Rachel, I wasn't really begging, but she knew. I love you too, so please. Don't leave me. I hated how my voice shook and then broke. I needed Rachel. She pulled me down lower and kissed me. I wrapped my arms around her and pulled her closer, convincing myself that if I hung on hard enough she wouldn't leave me. And then she let go. In more ways than one. And when she looked back at me sadly and said goodbye, she meant that in multiple ways too. Chapter 7. Annabeth. I was surprised when Rachel told us she would be leaving for some all-girls boarding school at the end of the day. I wondered if that was why Percy had been so quiet this morning. That's something he definitely never was. But there was also a little part of me that was excited. Maybe this would end them. Maybe with her gone Percy would realize that yeah. I was not going to do anything about it until she was gone and I knew for certain they were no longer together. I really wanted to know if Percy had really been about to kiss me that time, and I planned on finding out sometime soon. But I had to wait until Rachel left because I didn't want to ruin my friendship with her. It's not her fault I can't get him out of my head. We were sitting in the lunchroom laughing and talking like we usually did and pretending like one of us wasn't leaving in a few hours. Annabeth, Rachel's still here. You shouldn't stare yet, Piper whispered. I quickly looked away. The rest of the day passed quickly. 1 minute we were in lunch and the next minute we were all walking out the door. Usually we don't all leave together, but we all wanted to say goodbye to Rachel. It didn't really set in for me that we probably wouldn't be seeing her for a really long time until she was in her dad's car being driven away. Why was he transferring her so close to the end of the year? Couldn't he have at least waited until the end of the year? It seemed wrong to switch her to another school with less than a month to go until she finished up this one with us. After she left we didn't all go home like I thought we would. Instead we all went to Piper's place and hung out for a while. Percy, sometime later. Percy, wake up. Do you seriously plan on sleeping all summer? Your girlfriend is at the door. My mom shouted up from downstairs. Girlfriend? I don't have one of those. Rachel hasn't answered a single text since she sent me the text not to wait for her to come back. I'm still not sure if that was her telling me to get a new girlfriend or not. Slowly I dragged myself out of bed and got dressed, wondering who it was that was at the door. Only a few girls would come by my house without telling me first. Let her in, I'll be down in a minute. I called down the stairs. I knew it would be useless to try and convince my mom that whoever it was wasn't my girlfriend, so I didn't even try. I walked downstairs and saw her. Annabeth. She was standing in the middle of the kitchen looking uncomfortable as my mom talked to her about something. She wore a pair of jean shorts and a grey shirt with a picture of an owl outlined in black. Black obviously wasn't a good color choice to wear in the summer, and neither was grey. My mom turned around, probably to call for me again, and saw me standing there on the stairs. Well, come down and say hi. Or would you prefer to just stare at her all day? I walked the rest of the way downstairs, avoiding looking at Annabeth and again ignoring the comment. So what did you want? I asked Annabeth. You have your phone back now, right? I nodded. Then maybe you should start checking it. Everyone has sent you messages, and since you haven't texted anyone back, they sent me here to see why. She said, sounding like she would rather be anywhere else doing anything else. Well, since I no longer have a girlfriend, I'm no longer interesting now, am I? I thought to myself. I took my phone out of my pocket. I put the battery back in. I had actually forgotten about it. I had dropped it and didn't want to put the battery back in and find out it was broken, so I had shoved it in my pocket with the intention of putting it back together later. I guess the jeans weren't clean. I swear they smelled clean. I looked at a screen with hundreds of notifications. Geez, it was only off for like 5 days. Chapter 8. Percy. Most of them were just from the group chat. They were trying to figure out what we should do over the summer, but after a little bit they realized I hadn't said anything and started asking why I wasn't answering. I never understood that. If you don't answer someone, they text and ask why you're not answering them. There are only 2 reasons someone wouldn't answer you. Either they can't, so they won't tell you why they can't answer because they can't answer, or they are ignoring you, so they choose not to answer your question. Either way, they aren't going to text back. Hello? Are you going to read them or not? I looked up. Huh? Annabeth rolled her eyes and pointed at the phone. Oh. I looked back down at the phone. The conversation went pretty much like this. Blah blah blah. Blah blah. Blah blah. Beach again, will solace? No pun original, Piper. Blah blah blah. Arcade, Leo? Video games have no educational value and rot people's brains out. And I suck at them, Annabeth. Blah blah words. How about a trip to the Science Museum, Annabeth? Wow, I thought we were your friends. But now you're trying to kill us with boredom before the first month of summer vacation. Do I even have to tell you that was Leo? Needless to say, nothing was decided. Then from Nico, I'm surprised Percy hasn't come on and said we should all go visit the new aquarium. Yeah, Percy, you're being quite. What's the matter, Annabeth? Got your tongue, Leo, Hazel. What, I can make jokes like that he's single again. Right, Percy, Leo? After that they spent a bit of time texting me before giving up. I looked up again, looking, well, not at Annabeth but in that general direction. Movies? I said. Now it was Annabeth's turn to be confused. What? That's what you came here for, isn't it? To see what I wanted to do? 'Cause if all you came to do was get me to look at the messages you would have left already, I told her. Oh yeah. I also came to drag you over to that sea? Faye with the nasty coffee, Piper and Hazel like. We're going there to talk about it. We started walking towards the door. You guys are leaving? Percy, you can't wear those when you're going on a date. Mom said from where she was sitting in the living room. I looked down at my clothes. A pair of clean-looking blue jeans and an orange Camp Half-Blood t-shirt. It was my favorite shirt. I ordered a new one every year of Off the Fan page for Peter Jackson and the Olympians. And despite what Grover might tell you, I definitely did not use to pretend it was called Percy Jackson and that it was a story all about me. What's wrong with my clothes? My mom rolled her eyes. I didn't see her but she did. They're too casual for a date, she told me. Well then it's a good thing we aren't going on a date, I said back before slamming the door shut so I wouldn't be able to hear her if she said anything else. I looked at Annabeth apologetically, trying to say sorry about my mom without actually having to say it. I followed Annabeth as she silently led the way to the sea. Faye. Literally that was the name of the place. Super creative, right? Not. But thankfully Hazel's wired mom ran the place, so at least the nasty coffee was free. And occasionally she would close the store so we all could meet there. I mean, it was a small place, so it isn't like a whole lot of customers could fit in at the same time as us anyways. We must have been the last ones there. Jason, Piper, Raina, Calypso, Leo, Will, Nico, Hazel, Frank, Luke, Shiva, and Thalia all were there and had arranged the 4 small tables into a line so it almost looked like it was just one table. They turned to me as I walked in. What happened? Thalia asked. He took his battery out of his phone, Annabeth told them before I could answer. I dropped it in a puddle. I was going to put it back in after it dried but I forgot. I told them in response to the wired looks. I walked over and sat down at one of the 2 open seats. Annabeth took the seat across from me. Alright, any ideas what the first thing we should do this summer is? Piper asked. Skydiving. Jason shouted. I've always wanted to do that. I'm sorry Pipes, but who actually plans a vacation? That's too much work. We should just do whatever pops in our heads and whoever else wants to come does, Leo complained. Yeah, sure, you could do that if you want to have a normal boring summer, but this summer is going to be awesome. We bounced ideas back and forth for like an hour. Eventually we had a list of things we were going to do at some point over the summer. 1. Graffiti art, Thalia suggested. No, commanded we do that. 2. Skydiving, Thalia was really against that for some reason. 3. Going to the newly opened museum, Annabeth wouldn't take no for an answer. 4. Going to the movies, Leo wanted to see how long we could make it without being kicked out. 5. Going to the new virtual reality arcade thing Leo's dad opened up a few months ago. It wasn't long but it was good for now according to Piper. We had just started talking about dates and times and stuff when I got a text. Tree Huger, where are you? I was in town so I came over. I told him I'd be there in a minute and told everyone else I had to go. Where you going? Piper asked. To meet a friend, I told her. She looked around. Everyone's here. I rolled my eyes. one if my friends from another school, not very specific. One friend from one of like a dozen different schools. When I walked out, 2 people followed me. I looked at them. I'm going home. It's in the same direction, Nico said. Annabeth nodded. We started walking. Annabeth was silent, so I talked to Nico about that card game he likes. He got me a set and was teaching me the rules, so I actually understood some of the things he was talking about. In a couple months I'll probably be able to sound almost as geeky as him. Yay. Nico didn't live far from the sea. So the last 10 minutes was just me and Annabeth. When we got to my door she paused. She looked like she wanted to say something, so I waited. You're not going to go silent again, are you? She asked. I shook my head. Good, she looked like she still wanted to say more. I waited. She stood there. After like 5 minutes just standing there, she turned around and walked away. I blinked. Really? That was weird. I turned around and walked slowly up the stairs and into my apartment. Chapter 9, Paint Wars. Percy. I walked right up to my room to find Grover sitting on my bed. He was busy eating one of those nasty tin can candies he loves so much. I think they are nasty and tasteless, but whatever. So Percy, I was thinking that we should throw a party. Kick off the summer vacation with an awesome party. You could see some of your old friends and I could meet your new ones. Grover suggested once he noticed me. I asked him where we could throw a party and he seemed to get even more excited, which was an award-worthy accomplishment. Okay, so you know my rich uncle Ferdinand? The one who shows up every year on my birthday. Or at least around my birthday? Grover asked. I told him that yeah, I remembered the weird uncle of his who could never be contacted. Ferdinand shows up on his birthday with a really expensive gift. Whenever Ferdinand was in town he had something exciting for me and Grover to do, like the one time he showed up and rented out the entire laser tag place for Grover and our handful of friends. I wondered what Grover got for his birthday this year. Last year Grover got a cool black sports car. Well, this year he gave me his mansion. It's not that far from here. I blinked. Wow, that was a big gift. A slow smile crept across my face. This party was going to be epic. I let out a loud whoop. Then we spent the rest of the night making plans for the party while playing video games and listening to music. Grover was going to invite Juniper, Tyson, Beckendorf, and some new people in the group. Apparently Beckendorf got a girlfriend. Grover wasn't telling me who it was, but it had to be Silena. He liked her as long as he had been our friend. Annabeth. I woke up early. My phone was ringing. I was still a little tired and I picked it up without thinking to check who it actually was. Hey Annabeth. Percy's voice rang out from the phone. Hey, I need your help, he said after I asked him what he wanted. I rolled my eyes a little. Of course he needed my help, why else would he call me? What do you need my help with? So my friend Grover just got a mansion and... Percy started to say when I interrupted him. What? Yerich mostly absent uncle gave it to him as a birthday present, which is insane but not the point. Me and Grover. You mean Grover and I corrected him. Whatever. As I was saying, we are going to throw a party, but it's been a while since the mansion was actually lived in and it could use a little fixing up. Plus, besides the occasional birthday party, we haven't really been to that many parties, so I wanted to know if you could maybe help us out. Percy asked me. I rolled my eyes again. Percy Jackson? Not going to parties? He probably spent every second of his spare time going to wildly out of control parties. Sure, whatever, I told him unenthusiastically. I wasn't even sure why I was agreeing to help him in the first place. I mean, I didn't need to spend time alone with him and one of his friends. A spoiled rich stranger. No unspoiled person gets a mansion for his birthday. Thanks Annie, I really owe you one. He said and hung up before I could yell at him and tell him not to call me that. That was how I found myself in a semi-large mansion that was so beautifully constructed I just had to take the first half hour that I was there to run from room to room, pausing at the center of each room and spinning in a slow circle for a minute or two, just to marvel at all of the impressive architecture. The mansion had two huge chandeliers, one gold and one silver, that were absolutely gorgeous. All of its staircases were long and made out of beautiful dark wood. The stairs went straight then curved in two different directions leading to two different hallways on the same level. After that though the excitement was over for a while. Then it was a bunch of hard work. I can't say Percy was taking advantage of me though because he was doing as much as, if not more, work than me. Grover on the other hand did not do much. His role in all the work was limited to fetching stuff for us and changing the radio station when it started playing something horrid. There was so much work to be done too. When Percy said it hadn't been lived in a while hadn't been kidding. There was a thick caking of dust on everything. We decided to rearrange some furniture and a bunch of the doors needed to be fixed. We brought in some tables and helped stock up the fridge with party food and drinks. Then we started painting. After like half an hour, and a million frustrating mistakes, I said, "Too bad Rachel isn't here. She could have this whole thing done in 5 seconds. And she'd make less mistakes too." Instantly he froze and tensed up, but then he turned to me with a smile so wide I knew I must have imagined his first reaction. "But then there would be no time to have any fun," Percy said with an odd twinkle in his eyes that I knew as his mischief look. My heart skipped a few beats, but if anyone asked I'd still deny it. "Messing up isn't fun," I said a little too loudly. "Oh, but making mistakes is the fun part," Percy said, standing up suddenly from dipping his paintbrush in the paint can. His paintbrush, dripping with fresh paint, brushed against my shirt and Percy smiled innocently. "Oops," he said and then tried unsuccessfully to stifle a laugh. He did that on purpose. "Percy!" I screamed, but his smile just grew wider and his laugh grew louder. He was laughing about ruining one of my favorite shirts. I swiped my paintbrush across his face, leaving a line of white from his cheek to right under his eye. "See, wasn't that fun?" he asked, but I just swiped him with the paintbrush angrily again. "Oh, it's on now," he cried, still smiling. Then things quickly got a little out of hand. We chased each other all around the mansion, jumping over furniture and bumping into walls as we tried to avoid getting covered in paint. Eventually Percy got bored of flinging paintbrushes and decided to try using a paint can. He picked one up and started chasing me, trying to get close enough to dump it on me, but he was too slow. I turned around and ran backwards so I could taunt him while running away, which turned out to be a bad idea because seconds later I tripped over something and went crashing to the floor. Percy didn't have enough time to stop, so then he tripped and came falling towards me. If he hadn't caught himself he probably would have broken a few of my bones. He was looking at me and he had a hand on either side of my head holding him up, but he was still way too close. Percy smiled. "Gotcha," he breathed out so low I could barely hear it. I could feel his breath on my lips and I shivered. It was from the cold. Even though the sun was baking the world outside and if there was any air conditioning in this place it certainly wasn't on, I was shivering from cold. "Yeah, right." Percy picked up his one hand and leaned to the left a little so he was supporting all his weight with that hand. Then he poked my nose with his right pointer finger, and when he pulled it away I realized it had paint on it. I couldn't breathe with him so close. He smiled. "It's not a can, but it seems like it was plenty effective. You seem stunned enough," he said. "Nothing to do with the paint," I screamed internally. I needed to get out from under him before the proximate killed me. Then I noticed he was still pointing his finger at me, meaning he was still unbalanced and putting all his weight to the left. I rolled left and he toppled. Suddenly I was on top. Let's never repeat that. I pinned his arms to his side with my legs so that he couldn't just shove me off. I reached over his head to grab the can of paint he dropped when he fell. I had to lean forward slowly so I wouldn't lose my balance. My hand touched the handle when I felt Percy trying to move his hands. I sat up quickly, dragging the paint can up with me. As soon as I sat up straight his hands stopped moving. He saw the can of paint and his eyes widened. As I stood up I looked again to see if he looked like he was going to bolt and found him staring at me. Our eyes locked and suddenly I felt a little lightheaded. Also a little dizzy. His eyes were more green than blue today. It was wired how they shifted between the two colors. Usually though they could best be described as sea green. This wasn't new information to me. I had looked him in the eyes before, I just wasn't used to staring at them. Percy mumbled something incoherent, snapping me out of my daze. "You going to run away now, Jackson?" I asked and, surprising, he just smiled. I upended the can onto him and, like two drops dripped out of the can and onto him. Percy laughed at my shocked expression. "Yeah, some of it spilled out while we were playing bumper cars with the walls," he said between laughs. I blinked and glanced behind me. "Yeah, it's been empty for at least 5 minutes. I just didn't want to say anything." "You looked like you were having fun," he said quietly. I blinked again. Then I laughed. "Dude!" Grover yelled loudly from behind me, "Making jump!" Percy mumbled up from the ground. He paused to take a deep breath before going on. "Yeah, I think we're gonna need some more paint," Percy joked. "I think I'll just hire someone else to do this part." "What did you do, have a paint war?" Grover asked. Percy smiled sheepishly up at him and I just shrugged. "I mean, I couldn't really deny it now, could I?" Grover blinked. He hadn't really been expecting that kind of response. "Really?" Grover asked angrily, but his poorly hid smile kind of ruined it. "How dare you use up all that paint messing around? How dare you do that?" Before I could get home and join in the fun, I rolled my eyes. "I'm surprised by you, Annabeth," Grover said. "From the way Percy describes you, you didn't seem like the kind of person to do something like this." "The way Percy describes me?" "Yeah, Percy has told me all about you. You and your perfect grades, maturity, and shyness. Although you really should stop making fun of my best friend. He may think it's fine because he's too busy staring into your—" Here he put his hand over his heart, stared off into the distance, and spoke in a fake dreamy voice. I couldn't be sure if he was mocking me or Percy. "Dreamy eyes. They're a beautiful grey with flecks of silver in them that somehow makes them look even better." I turned around to look at Percy. "I didn't say that," he said defensively. I tried to ignore the slight bit of disappointment I felt. Grover got out his phone and turned on a recoding of a voice. Of Percy's voice, saying something. It started and Percy's head snapped up to look at Grover. Percy ran towards Grover. Percy was across the room snatching the phone from out of Grover's hands. "Drea." The recording cut off as Percy did so, effing on the phone. My heart started beating a little faster again. Had that been a recording of Percy describing my eyes like Grover made it seem? No, my realistic side said, simply drowning out the ecstatic yeses from my hopeful side. "Grover, why did you record that?" Percy shouted angrily, but Grover just smiled up at his best friend. Percy's cheeks were getting a little red now. He looked back down at the phone again and went pale. "Oh man, I'm sorry, I gotta go." "Grover, I told you to tell me when it got close to 5. He said before taking off. By the time I thought to go after him, he was gone.